Small revenge against hoarders. Saw a couple who had filled their trolley with toilet roll arguing with an elderly couple who had asked for one packet because there wasn't any on the shelves and they'd ran out. These two were a right piece of work and being quite abusive to the elderly couple. I went over to the elderly couple and told them to finish their shopping and that I would come and find them. They go off and arsehole couple carry on what they're doing. When their backs were turned, I grabbed 2 packets out of their trolley, go and find the elderly couple and give it to them. I then went and found a shop assistant and told them about arsehole couple being abusive to the elderly, and when they get to the checkout their trolley is taken off them and they're escorted out by security. This has made me extremely happy. Scream at me to use my air. Yeah, right. I was at a gas station putting air in my tire. This gas station required you to pay $1, but came with a pressure gauge. The gas station across the street had free air but no gauge. As I'm filling my tires, a lady pulls up beside me and starts asking questions like how much it was to use, how much time, etc. I answered her questions as best I could, but really was more focused on filling my tires since there was a time limit. My car has annoying warning lights that let you know if a tire is low, even the spare, and I hate when these sensors are lit up. The lady is still waiting there and is getting visible annoyed. This lady yells out, "Will you hurry up? I'm in a rush." I was confused for a second, but quickly realized that she just wanted to use my time without paying. I did what any gentleman would do and proceeded to move slower. I pulled out of the spot and into a gas pump. She almost hit my car swooping into where my car was. She jumps out, and as she puts the air pump to her tire, it shuts off. I guess I was smiling way too big because as she jumped into her car and sped off, she yells, "Fuck you," at me. I was so pleased with how it all timed out I didn't even care. Such a great moment. Annoy every person in the terminal? Get your bag confiscated by TSA. Waiting for flight to board at a major East Coast airport. In walks this young, slick, loud business kid, early 20s, on a conference call, shouting into his Apple earbuds. Drops his bag on the one free seat and starts pacing the floor, up and down the aisle, oblivious to dozens of folks eating lunches, working quietly, babies sleeping. Continues pacing and shouting, "Yup, yup. We'll upload that into the system." Blah blah jargon, acronyms, and business bullshit, annoying everybody around, making everyone else get out of his way. Folks start giving him the stink eye, but his shouting and pacing continue, his circuit widening until he's walking out of sight, then circling back, still shouting into the air. After 20 minutes of this, I'm over it. Kid stalks off in a hurried pace, abandoning his backpack for the 3 or so minutes it takes him to pace the terminal. So I walk up to a TSA guard and point to the bag. "Sir, there's an unclaimed backpack on that seat." Then I walk away. TSA starts making announcements, trying to find the owner of the bag, but douchebag business kid is too oblivious, pacing and shouting. TSA is already removing the bag when he realizes and chases after them. Too late. He's suspect, and he has to follow them out of the terminal for a bag check. And now it's quiet again. My significant other was running a double life. Oh, this is the perfect place for this little story. My significant other had a double life. He had a girlfriend that thought she was in a full-blown relationship when he practically lived with me. She thought I was getting in the way of their love story, so she contacted me to give me the what's up. For context, I knew nothing about her. Unfortunately, she was the side chick who believed that coming to his place for 1 to 2 hours once a week to give him sexual favors was a legit relationship. When she contacted me to try to tell me to stay away from her mans, I called him, and he freaked out. I told him it was either her or me. He cried and pleaded and told me he can't live without me. I made him dump her on the phone in front of me. I then turned around and dumped him. That was 100% always my plan, lol. ML tried to make us jealous, but ended up getting jealous herself. Mother-in-law has always been bitter that I took her son away from her. She's the queen of negging, and I am often her #1 target. She loves to make me jealous, sends pictures of her new cars, sends pictures of her new house, sends pictures of her designer handbags, etc., saying, "Isn't it great I can afford all this?" Mother-in-law didn't invite us on vacation last summer. She invited and paid for her other son, his GF, and the GF's sister to go. She bought them designer souvenirs and sent us pictures every day of their vacation captioned, "I bet you're so jealous." Not 3 months after she excluded us from her vacation, my parents invited us on their vacation. We accepted. Mother-in-law was furious. Jealousy is not a good look on her. She threw a tantrum saying that she was losing her little boy and that she wanted to be the best mom in the world. She was so jealous that my mother is getting more attention than her. She cried about how she never sees us and how we've always shown blatant favoritism towards my parents. The best bit of all this, it was at this moment so decided to tell her that we are moving 5 hours away, to my parents' city. My neighbors wouldn't stop smoking on the balcony. I bought a super soaker. It swept into my apartment at all hours of the night. There was a designated smoking area, but that was inconvenient for them. I bought a massive water gun and waited one night until it was good and dark outside. When the smoke began, I stepped silently out into the night and sprayed all of the ice-cold water as hard as I could into their direction. I heard them yelp in shock as I quickly retreated back into my apartment. My heart was racing and I had a huge thrill. I felt scared but satisfied. They had no way of knowing it was me, but they did know I often complained about them. The next day, I acted like nothing had happened and said hi to them cheerfully. They began to accuse me. I acted shocked and appalled until they admitted they didn't know for sure what had happened. I said things like, "Are you sure it wasn't raining? Maybe another neighbor smelled smoke and thought there was a fire?" Then I went back home and laughed my ass off in glee. This girl in the theater had her feet up on the back of my friend's chair. I was out to a movie with my friends last night. We come and sit down, and I realized pretty soon that this girl in the row behind us has her feet up on my friend David's seat. She's there with one of her friends. So David turns around and he says something like, "Do you think you could put your feet down?" And I think they say something in response, but I didn't hear it. The feet didn't go down. A few minutes later, David says, "Hey, will you get your feet off my chair?" It's extremely rude, and they still don't budge. So I tell David that he should go find an employee and get them to talk to this girl. He does exactly that, and after a couple minutes an employee comes and talks to this girl. She is obviously pretty peeved, but begrudgingly agrees to put her feet down. After the employee leaves, she puts her feet right back up. At this point, I'm pissed off. Why is it so important to you that you have your feet up on someone's chair? You're just being a brat. So I get out of my seat, walk up 2 rows, sit down in the seat directly behind this girl, and stick my foot on the back of her chair and push it forward. They both turn around and try to say something to me, but I can't really hear them since the movie had started by this point. So I just say, "Just watch the movie." I kept my feet up there the entire movie. It felt like I had done wall sits for 2 hours, but I'm glad I did it. I met my old workplace bully whilst he was on a date. So back in June, I left a very toxic workplace of 8 years. I mainly left due to having a breakdown from being overworked. But this one particular person made working there even worse on top of the excessive work. This guy was 1 year younger than me. He was a 30-year-old man, the type of guy that appears to have peaked in secondary school, very jock-like mentality and childish too. He was part of my team of 4. I was civil with him just because I had to work with him, but he was my workplace bully. Apart from just the general workplace banner, this guy, let's call him Chris, was relentless with his teasing. What would usually be classed as playful always pushed a bullying from him because he never knew when to quit. And if he noticed you were getting stressed or annoyed, he'd use you as a target of his teasing for the rest of the day. He would be super nice to you when it's just the 2 of you, but as soon as he has an audience, he picks his victim and will tease them constantly in what he would call playful. And if you ever got annoyed and stood up for yourself, he'd say he's only messing and make out like he's the victim. He's that type of person. One specific thing that he absolutely lost any respect I had for him was when I was still working there. Some ex-employee wrote a very aggressive and angry review on Glassdoor about the company. Just because this person used a phrase that I use, Chris thought the review was me. As much as I proved that it wasn't me, didn't even have a Glassdoor account at the time. He was relentless with campaigning around the office that I was the one that wrote it. I also believe he told the boss that I was the one that wrote it once I left, and that's why I didn't get any freelance work from them afterwards. So after I left my workplace, my old team still have a group WhatsApp that I'm a part of, and we still talk almost every other day on it. After I left, the group chat went a bit quiet. I assumed they made a new one of just them, which is fair. But the chat still kept going occasionally. I unfollowed and unfriended Chris on Facebook and Instagram because I just didn't want to be associated with him anymore. In the middle of the group chat, he broadcasts, "Why did you unfollow and unfriend me on Facebook?" whilst also at ING me. He wrote this message at 6:30 a.m. I woke up to this message broadcasted in the group chat. It pissed me off. So I was honest and said that he's a bully, and instead of making a big thing of it, I'd rather just remove him from the equation. I also said that it was immature of him to do this over the group chat and not in private. He didn't say anything. He just left the group chat and blocked me on everything. The group chat pretty much died after that. I was at the time livid. This 30-year-old man set fire to the group chat, saw what I said, and then ran off. I thought it must be a blessing in disguise because I finally got to say what I wanted to him, and I now don't have to acknowledge him again. But I was wrong. Skip to 3 months later, me and my husband walking through town and stopping off at a pub to get some grub. And lo and behold, I see Chris there with a new girl I hadn't seen before. I was feeling extra confident and decided to approach. I went and said, "Hey Chris, long time no see," with a big grin on my face, Chris looking like a deer in headlights, the perfect kind of red cheeks. I asked him, "How are things? You doing well?" And he replied in a very normal way, clearly not wanting the conversation to continue and looking awkward as fuck in front of his new girl. She asked how we knew each other. I generously waited for Chris to say we used to work together. So I added on to that, "Yeah, it's quite funny really. Chris used to be my workplace bully. He's the reason why I struggled financially after I left my old job because he accused me of writing a hostile review to the company, which I proved I didn't do, and lost me a lot of freelance work because of it." He was gobsmacked, face redder than a traffic light. The new girl clearly looking confused and uncomfortable. Neither of them responded. I didn't want it to carry on much longer as it wasn't really fair on her. But just to add salt to the wound, I said, "So is this your new girlfriend, Catherine? Or is this Georgia? What happened with Sarah since someone said you were still with her last week?" "All of those are completely true," he gets around. This girl goes from confused to angry in the blink of an eye and just stares at Chris. I just say, "Oh whoops, I really put my foot in my mouth, haven't I? I better go. It was nice seeing you again, Chris," and walk off. My husband, whilst he felt bad for the girl, which I did too, but TBF, I might have saved her from inevitably being dumped by him a few weeks later when he gets bored of her, was very proud that I finally got my closure revenge on him. It feels amazing. Like I feel petty as fuck, but it felt good for there to finally be some consequences to this Chris guy being a dick. Edit. Wow, this blew the hell up. Thank 99% of you for the lovely comments. I loved a few of your stories too about your petty revenge. Naturally, there's the 1% who just don't believe anything that they read on the internet, and that is fair. A lot of the internet is bullshit. But this story is 100% from myself. You can check my post history if you must. I've talked about this toxic workplace before. 2 girls rolled their eyes at me at a restaurant while I was only trying to be nice. Fine. Keep waiting then. I was having lunch at this restaurant last Sunday with my friend. All the other tables were occupied. 2 girls appeared, but since it was packed and there were no empty tables nor vacant seat, they just stood there awkwardly looking around waiting for some people to get up and leave. I told them we're almost finished, so they could have our table after we left. But instead of being thankful, they just threw me a dirty look and rolled their eyes as if I were trying to flirt with them. My face went red and I didn't know what to say. I was just trying to be nice. It wasn't as if I was trying to initiate a small talk with them or something. Then my embarrassment turned to anger. The least they could do is just nod their heads. Then I heard one of them said to the other maybe they should just go to another restaurant. And her friend said no because it was the only Chinese restaurant in the vicinity of their place, and also because that guy, she pointed at me with her lips in a not-so-subtle way, was almost done. Fine. I raised my hand and called one of the waiters and told her we would like to have more drinks, which she brought out a few minutes later. My friend was trying so hard to stifle his laughter I swear he broke a rib or two, while we very slowly ate the rest of our meal. The rude girls left quickly soon after. Officer didn't give a warning, so I told his kid he couldn't ride. For the last few years, I've worked pre-season at an amusement park. I have the final call as a supervisor, since I've got 6-year seniority, even though I only work 8 days a year. 5 years ago, a police officer gave me a citation for driving 5 miles per hour over the limit, even though I hadn't received a citation since 2001. 2 days ago, a ride operator called me because someone was upset that his child wasn't tall enough to ride. Although I could have allowed his child to ride, with adult supervision, I recognized the officer and denied his request. Yep, 5 millimeters under, officer. I'm sure he understood after that as his child bawled. Ida? Yes. Why yes I am. You're still handing out your old number after 5 years? Enjoy your appointments canceled. So, I've had my number for 5 years, maybe 6, I don't remember exactly. When I got this number, the previous owner still got regular messages and phone calls, which is completely understandable that she didn't have everyone up to date on her newest number or lack of number. The first 3 months it was nothing to me. I'd answer the calls, send them on their way. Well, that was until I got a phone call from an elementary school looking for, let's call her Sarah. Sarah's daughter was throwing up and running a high fever and needed to go home. I told the school that this was a new number for me and there was no Sarah around. I thought certainly this issue would make her come to the realization that she needed to update her number. But no. I had to block the school's number because I continued to get calls and texts that had way too much information about Sarah's daughter, including her name, age, and school events with times and changes in school schedules. I wasn't comfortable receiving that info, so I blocked it. Maybe 2 or 3 weeks after I blocked the school, Sarah's grandmother calls me because I assumed the school couldn't get a hold of Sarah. But I have to tell Grandma that I'm not Sarah and to please ask her granddaughter to update her information. Sarah still did not. With all of the information that I unwillingly had on Sarah, full name, age, where she attends college, her home address, and where she works, I found her on Facebook and kindly asked her to not use her old number anymore. I'm not sure if she saw the message or not, but it didn't help my problem. This has been ongoing for years, and it's not just spam. It's people she knows, coworkers, family, doctors, her real estate agent even. So, before, if she had appointments that were asking to be verified via text to my phone, I would just ignore them. But she had an appointment this time, and I am just so fed up of Sarah still giving out this number after 5 years of this nonsense that I canceled her appointment for her. A few days later, a new appointment to the same place needed verification, and I canceled it again. And the next one I get will be canceled also. Get your shit together, Sarah. TLDR. Person keeps using my number as their current contact info for 5 years, so I cancel all of her appointments that send text messages for a verification. Police were called because of leaves. That's gonna cost you. This is recent and very petty but great. My friend keeps a very clean yard. In the fall he likes to get all the leaves before it rains and they become a bitch to pull up. His neighbor doesn't care about his yard as he has owned the house for a few years and still has not moved in. He lives a few states away. As my friend was finishing up sucking up the leaves with his machine, some of them blew into the neighbor's driveway way. Maybe 20 leaves total. My friend finished up and went inside. About 20 minutes later, there was a knock on the door and squad car outside. The officer said they received a complaint about leaves being blown into the driveway. The neighbor had been watching on his doorbell cam and decided this transgression warranted police intervention. You could tell the officer was visibly annoyed as my friend asked the officer to look at his yard and then his neighbor's. The pettiness. The neighbor had an old car shipped and dropped in the driveway about 8 months ago where it has sat ever since. Remember, he still lives a few states away. While my friend told the officer he would clean the leaves promptly, he asked the officer if he could do him a favor. Check the car for proper tags. The officer saw the car in question and gave a slight smile. While my friend cleaned the leaves out of the driveway, then officers were walking around the car looking at the VIN and running information. You could hear the neighbor on his doorbell asking what the problem was. There is a law: any car that is in the driveway must have tags and insurance on them. The police gave him a call and told him his car was in violation, and he either needed to put the car in the garage, which would need to be lifted and dropped in the garage, or get the registration, insurance, and an e-check on the car that can't be driven taken care of within 2 weeks, or they will be back to tow the car and ticket him. Dude cost himself a 10-hour car ride to get his car lifted and stuffed in the garage all over a few dead leaves.